Kathleen Schassler and a new episode of Conscious Creator. Tonight we have Sarah Chaplin, the host of Giant Steps, another show on the Conscious Consumer Network. And you are also an author, fictional author, musician, and another fellow seeker of lost knowledge. So welcome. Thanks so much for joining me on this bright early morning in America.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I made you get up a bit early, haven't I?
I love it. I love it. It's a good incentive, you know, really. It gave me a good incentive to get going today.
Yeah. Have you been up the mountain yet today? Is that later?
No, I haven't. And let me tell you one thing. I'm just going to pull this window shade up. I was out there 2 days ago and I met a bear in the meadow.
Wow.
So I think the rabbit I've been watching in my yard the last few months has been teaching me, because I saw the rabbit elude 3 bobcats. I saw the rabbit elude a fox. And then I think I reacted so fast. I hightailed. I don't think he saw me yet. And I might have been a young cub, because there's been a mom and 2 cubs in our neighborhood. My feet were flying. I was running through the woods before I even knew what was happening.
So you didn't kind of eyeball each other then?
I don't think so. You know, I didn't have glasses on, so it was a little blurry. But yeah, and there was a fleeting second, because I love to post photos onto my Instagram of like that popped through my head, like, oh, get a photo, you know, like, but I think it was so instantaneous because I was flying.
Yeah, that's a difficult one, isn't it? Get a photo, do a selfie with the bear, get off the mountain. Well, listen, I just want to bookmark something, because you just said something right there that is something that would be good to talk about at some point during the show, is bobcat, because bobcat is my spirit animal.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and I've been having some experiences, you know.
Are you connected to my Instagram?
I don't believe I am. I don't really use Instagram that much, but I should then.
I love Instagram. It seems quieter to me, and it's more visual. But I just saw a bobcat sitting by my, the backyard here just a couple days ago. So I have a photo, I have a video, and I have a video of the 3 bobcats when they were hunting that mom with her 2 kits.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Beautiful. So that's interesting that I was wondering about my spirit animal, and we were talking about it. I was at a family constellation in Trumbull, and with the shaman there, but I'm thinking the rabbit might have been more of a teacher for me in this instance. So maybe
in real life, yeah, in this world.
So yeah, so now I'm a little tentative, and so I've been reading tips on the internet, and I was, had a whistle here I had from my old lifeguarding days, like I'm gonna blow a whistle and let the bear know that I'm coming, and of course he'll leave. Then I don't know how it's supposed to work.
I don't know how they respond to whistles, but it feels you might feel a little bit more of a sense of protection having one around your neck.
I really don't think a whistle is gonna protect me from the bear for some reason. I don't know.
Maybe you just need to bring it some food or something.
Exactly. So now I've been I don't know. I have to work through that now, because I just think about the bear out there, and
Yeah.
Anyway, so let me just take a quick look at my notes here. So today, I was hoping that maybe you could talk a little bit about, just briefly how you got into your show, and then just how it's evolved, because this was a new platform for you as well. You kind of stepped into a whole new experience, and then how that evolved for you to this point, and how you managed it as a newcomer too, because that's kind of how I'm kind of dealing with that, and just the impact that it's had on your life overall.
Yeah, so it came about because I was on a retreat last October in Portugal, and it was run by a lovely lady called Sky Akamesis, whose talks I've been going to on a Tuesday night in central London. And one evening I went for one of these talks, and she does theta healing, and she's into A Course in Miracles, and she's a yogini, and she's just a wonderful, amazing person. And all these talks have been very inspiring. And there was a leaflet on the table, this one saying, oh, we're running this retreat in Portugal, and it was a sort of 4 or 5 days, and the timing was perfect. And I just thought, I just made an instant decision that I was going to go. And I thought, I'm going to meet some great people there. It looks absolutely beautiful, the place she's running it, and I'll learn a lot, and I'll be in Sky's company for 5 days. What's not to like, So I went there, sure enough, did meet a bunch of really fabulous people, including a lady, Jo Lomax from Hull. Actually, she's not originally from Hull, but she lives there now, which is in the north. And a whole bunch of other, or anyone from the north of England is much friendlier and more open. And I grew up in the north, on the other side, in the northwest. And so it's always great when you meet a bunch of northerners, because they just kind of get straight to it, and you feel like you've been friends for life within about 10 minutes.
That's awesome.
My husband says people from Texas are like that as well. He's met a bunch of Texans recently, and he said, oh, they're so friendly, Anyway, so I kind of took an immediate light to this lady, and it turned out she had a show on this network. And she was telling us about, what she was doing with it and how inspiring. She was really kind of fired up about it and loving it, obviously. And she said, oh, you have to come on as my guest at some point. So the plan was I was going to be her guest somewhere in the new year, but somebody had let her down one week, and she just texted me on an off chance, you wouldn't possibly be available.
Right.
And so I said, well, actually, yeah, let's do it. I don't mind. I like spontaneity. It doesn't bother me. Right. And we had a great time. We did a great show together, and I really enjoyed. I found it much easier than I thought. Just kind of talking like we are now. It was less of a big deal. I think the only other tiny bit of TV that I'd done before was wearing a much more sort of official hat. I'd been chairing a particular academic award for student dissertations, and they wanted to do a segment for TV, about how we judged the dissertations and why we'd chosen the one we had for the award. And I just had my second child, and I think all the way through the interview I was worried about needing to breastfeed my baby. and my when you had a baby, your mind's just not on it at all. Right. So I felt like I made a complete mess of this interview, and I had a bit of a phobia about the idea of being, not so much my, talking, the voice part was fine. It was the sort of being seen part, I think.
Right.
And I'd done quite a bit of radio, just a few interviews, and I'd always felt comfortable doing radio. But yeah, TV was a whole other deal. And then when I came off air, the producers sent me a message and just said, would you consider doing your own show? And I was thinking, wow, that's an amazing offer, but I need to think about it, because the funny thing was I'd been really kind of beating myself up about the fact I'd signed up for a music course, a kind of sort of like a build your confidence, overcome your phobias kind of online music course, which was 6 Monday evenings from something like 8 till 10 or something. And I'd managed 2 of the 6, and I was really cross with myself because I'd double booked, I hadn't put things in the diary. And one thing after, I felt like I was just making excuses to the guy running it, and he was doing a really good job, and it was an excellent course. And I was quite upset that I'd been so disorganized. And I was thinking, if you can't manage to do 6 Mondays back to back.
Right.
So then when Biggie said to me, oh yeah, I can give you a slot on a Monday night, I felt the universe was saying something to me like, okay, you can make amends for this, but you're going to have to commit every Monday now from here on in. So I was like, okay, that's quite amusing. I found it quite funny. And I just thought, well, I need to have a little bit of a concept, I need to go away and think, not just that I'm going to randomly going to bring people on and talk about whatever the latest thing is on the top of my head. I'm going to have a little bit of a structure, and what would that be, and what kind of elements would I want to bring in. And then I had this idea that I'm a jazz musician, and I'm also on a journey. I'm doing my inner work. I'm on some sort of spiritual path. I haven't worked it all out really yet. Where I'm with it, and how I might eventually
just using your imagination,
just use my exactly. And I've been in teaching for a long time before that, and I've done a load of writing, and I was thinking it'll either be a book, or I'll start teaching some aspect of this, or I'll just, somehow or other it will come in.
Right.
Yeah. So I wasn't worried about it. And I was thinking, well, maybe the TV show will give me a reason to hook up with people, and an excuse to ask them to have a conversation with me live on air. And I will overcome some of my shyness and my, get my presenter chops together, as it were. And I could maybe bring in a little bit of other things I'm interested in. So bring in some jazz and play
Right.
some jazz in the program, and maybe some of the guests would be jazz people and stuff. So
Right.
shape. And then there's a famous tune by John Coltrane, Giant Steps, and I thought, yeah, you know what, that's a good title, because it kind of, it would kind of enable me to go both ways with the show, and
Right.
a kind of a nod to the jazz world, and also in terms of what I was reading about. I mean, I'm really into all the stuff about giants and ancient aliens, and the kind of skeletons that we've got buried somewhere around. That I think the Smithsonian has got most of the giant skeletons and isn't showing the world what they've got, really. So I thought somewhere the literal giants are going to feature on the show, and also I just thought Giant Steps was what I was feeling that was going to, my guests would have in common. That they would have all made some sort of big leap in their life to get where they are now, to be doing what they're doing now, that they wouldn't have expected if somebody told them 10 years back, oh, by the way, in 10 years you'll be doing this.
Right.
They said, no way.
Right, it's true.
And that, I think all of my guests have definitely had that in common. So it's turned out to be quite a decent title, I think, for the show.
Right. And I think that it's, I agree with the point of having the platform as a way to interact with people. And I think that's for me, because I've been on a sabbatical for the past year. And so I'm much more isolated, just because mostly I'm resting a lot, right? But because typically as a reporter, I was interacting mostly with people through my work. And I would, get in-depth experiences with people that I would interview. And so there's a big void. Well, I think I had absorbed enough information. That's what that rest period was for. But it is a great way to connect, and
yeah, for sure,
and also be able to share that, So, and it beats writing.
Yeah, it's much quicker than writing. Sometimes I think, some of the conversations could get a bit transcribed and worked up into a set of ideas. I mean, the show I did just last night, actually, with Corey Matthew, there was some ideas that we started tossing around, and I was thinking, we're onto something here. Maybe this needs to be written into a little article.
And write that in your journal, or if you're not keeping a journal now, because you're also a writer, and so it may inspire.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe everybody's got a book in them, I don't know, but
everything's an ingredient. That's how I look upon it. You meet someone at a bus stop, and it can turn out to be something that an idea, or turn into a
as long as you stay open.
Yeah, stay open, exactly. And that's like when I go meditate in the mornings. That's part of my my sort of opening gambit is I kind of I do some deep breathing, and then I go, my body is healed, my mind is open, my heart is full of love and gratitude, and there's peace in my world. And then I try and sort of spin it out to my family, and then to all the people that I'm, that are my world, if you like, the bigger picture. And it may be like a massive online community that I'm kind of calling to mind, or a smaller group, like my son's basketball community or something. Depends who I've been kind of hooking up with recently. And just feel the energy,
Putting that good energy out there, putting some out.
Putting the energy out there, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's awesome. How long had Jo been into her show when she had you on?
Ooh, I don't know, a good 18 months, I think. Yeah, she'd have been doing it well. She's quite courageous about asking some really, prominent people on. So she's got better viewing figures. I've noticed I need to up the ante a bit there.
Don't look at that. Keep doing what you're doing. Let the universe take care of it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think sometimes if your focus shifts to that, it may impact really what you're doing, or what your soul really wants to express when you're trying to please someone out there,
Yeah. Well, it gets a bit too kind of bogged down in the sort of 3D logic, doesn't it? The 3D reality logic. And I was aware of that last week, because I'm with the business that I've got going to do with a jazz listings app that we created in 2016, and I've been running for the last 2 years.
Jazz Live online?
Yeah, Jazz London Live. So
Live.
the website, jazzlondonlive.com, and it's also an app on Android and Apple. But it's just for the area that I live in London and the South East. But there's a lot of jazz on there, and there wasn't any sort of a comprehensive listings thing. So I kind of took it upon myself 2 years ago. It's one of the night ideas. And it's been a great adventure. You know, we crowdfunded it, and I didn't know anything about creating apps, and I've learned how to use WordPress and Inside Out, and a lot of things about kind of being kind of part of a very small but very passionate community, which is jazz, you know, to a T really. And then to sort of feel that you've got some traction, but when you're asking people to pay for a service as well, so the venues and the artists and people who want to have their stuff listed on there, it's always difficult because I'm not a good salesperson. I don't find that comes naturally, and you feel a little bit awkward, and then you cut deals and you sort of think, oh, I shouldn't have really kind of given them that amount of discount. And then recently we've been switching the whole thing over to a subscription model. So they choose between one of 3 or 4 packages, the benefits that they want and the price they want to pay, rather than us saying, right, we're listing this many gigs, you owe us this, you know. So it will take out a big headache in terms of the amount of invoices, and it will hopefully make things flow a lot better. But I realized that I was getting quite, you know, bogged down in it all, you know.
That's a challenge for me on that side as well.
Yeah, trying to be persuasive, and then realizing that I just need to let, you know, some sort of
take care of it, right?
Take care of it. So I've backed off this week, and I'm just going with the flow this week. I'm not
Have you looked at Patreon at all?
Yeah, I did wonder about that, because that's more of a sort of voluntary contribution.
It's a subscription method, and I haven't spent. I want to spend more time doing a little research there, but there are musicians on there, composers, fiction writers that have, you know, 100, 200, 300 subscribers. There was one composer. My son is also a composer. He just graduated from the university, and he's a percussionist and a composer. So. I saw that marimba player on one of your, that maybe 1 or 2 shows. That was a wonderful
concert, maybe. It was at the Cuban concert, I think.
It was a daughter of the guest, I think, was part of the performance.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
So, so I'm always kind of interested, not only for me, but for other artists, you know, that there's, everybody's out there trying to create art or.
Yeah, it's a different way of earning a living, and I know a lot of YouTubers who have found Patreon to be the best way to monetize, instead of expecting YouTube, you know, advertising.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and you know, who knows what? There's new things coming out all the time. You know, so
I think there's a lot of new business models, and that's quite exciting, really, because I've had to talk to a lawyer friend of mine and go back and have lots of conversations with my accountant. And interestingly, you know, these things are moving so quickly that, you know, the first accountant I spoke to didn't have a clue how to account for crowdfunding money, you know.
Right.
So things are really changing quite quickly, and a lot of millennials are really good at this stuff, aren't they? You know, they're very kind of hot on how to kind of network and how to, you know, kind of find the angles.
Maybe some. I guess maybe I don't know enough millennials right now, and I feel like they get too much credit for a lot that I think everybody does. Gen X, come on, you're Gen X.
I am.
No one ever talks about Gen X. It's always like millennials, baby boomers, millennials.
I know. It's true.
You know, and I don't like to have all these kind of labels, but sometimes I just feel like, hey, you know,
don't forget about us.
Yeah, and there's other names for that, like Generation Jones, I think it's called as well. You know, so because we're just sandwiched in there, and you know, Gen X has done a lot to contribute to the digital age, especially. Like, this is Facebook, right? Amazon founder, like you could probably go down the list for amazing stuff. But the thing is, I think with our generation, I don't think you have all that ego. They're not out there going, oh, look at me.
Yes, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
You know? But I mean, I think everybody's talented. You have talented people in every generation, of course, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So I think sometimes when I guess that irks me when I see millennials everywhere, because I just think it's another way to separate us.
Right.
And
yeah.
I just think it's just people, you know, like, why do we have to have a label? And actually these labels, they come from, it's marketing. It's because they would define the baby boomers and this and that, because they want to know what your likes and dislikes are, so they know what to sell you.
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you can go on to like Harvard Business School, and I've printed out their, their list of, selling to Gen X. Gen X is in terrible shape for retirement, you know,
Yeah.
really. And I'm sure the millennials will be following suit, but so it's just interesting how this information comes out and then people use it and these labels, and it's really just something that's created to sell stuff to you.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they're just segments, and they're not really that meaningful because there's only so much you can read into a demographic, isn't there? And at the end of the day, there's something.
And the generations need to overlap more instead of having them separated, because you do need the older with the younger. They need that guidance because we've been out there. We have all the experience. They have all the energy, and the knowledge, but they don't want to go through those 20 or 30 years learning all the stuff that we had to learn the hard way.
And they're learning much more quickly. I mean, this whole thing, I mean, Corey was talking about it on my show last night, the way that everything seems to be speeding up, and I'm not sure whether it was, whether it's the energy coming from the galactic center, or it's just that, because technology speeded up, we're kind of responding as well, or our DNA is kind of activating, whatever the reason, things are changing more quickly. So like you say, we can't spend 20, 30 years gaining expertise. We need to kind of, mug up in a couple of days and then put it to work. That's the side.
And you're able to manifest much more quickly when you can find the right people that share that.
Yeah. But I love what you're saying about the multi-generational thing, and I think that's another reason why I like being part of the jazz community, because it's very age blind. You can kind of go and see a band and there'll be like an 18-year-old playing with an 80-year-old in the same band. It's not, because pop bands, it's all about the look and the, and the kind of they've all got to have something brandable kind of look. And in jazz, nobody's interested in that. Quite a lot of the time when you go and see a jazz band playing, it may be the first time they've ever played together, and they play a beautiful concert because it's just that kind of music. It's more improvised, it's more in the moment, and I love to see that happening, when you get that connection between very, very disparate people. They might be
perfect, isn't it? Yeah.
It's perfect. Yeah, exactly. One might be a university professor and the other's a taxi driver and the other guy's not got a job at all, and it doesn't seem to matter. It's, as long as
those are always the best families.
Yeah.
Because they all bring something unique and different, a different perspective. And I think what happens, especially here in the United States, it's like kids spend most of their life in school with surrounded by kids their own age, and kids are teaching each other, basically, instead of, if you're living in a multi-generational family, you'll have more access. Not everybody has that, in certain neighborhoods, depending on where you live, maybe if you live in a city, you have more access to all different age groups, but in the suburbs, sometimes it's tricky. People get in their cars and goes places and come home, and,
and also you live in a bubble. I mean, I know that I live in a bubble here on this side of London. I'm in southwest London, and last week my son's starting university in September. He's going to art school, and the art school is kind of over on the east side. And so we were looking for somewhere. We were going to visit a hall of residence for him to live in his first year, and he was in a kind of cheap end of town that I hadn't been to. I don't think I'd ever been to that corner of town, and it just makes you, step outside your bubble, and you realise people are living in our city, a very hand-to-mouth existence, and dead end bits of neighbourhood that you don't even know exist. And it was a real eye-opener, and I suddenly thought, wow, I've been in my bubble too long here. I haven't acknowledged that things are really tough for people in London right now, outside of the area that I live in.
Right. So you can always take your phone out and you can go and do a video and do a report. You have full power to go out and report as well as I do. But I'm getting there, But it's interesting because I've been watching more shows on YouTube, and I actually was just watching a clip on YouTube that had to do with the Black community in London. Mm-hmm. Maybe being, harassed by police or something like that, which was so interesting to me because I'm so familiar with those stories here in America.
Yeah. Well,
But
there's a lot of kind of, there's still a lot of racial hatred and inciting things that are going on. But, I think, again, it's another way that we're being divided and
right.
playing the race card, but in a weird new way now. This kind of I think that all the stuff with, I don't know if you've been following the story about Roseanne Barr and
Not really. I haven't even given any attention. I'm not falling for it.
no, exactly. So there's the way that played out was kind of very curious, and I think
ridiculous. It's a distraction, and I'm not falling for it. So I that's why it's what you focus your attention on. I refuse to focus my attention to these narratives that are meant to deceive us.
Yeah,
I'm not buying into it. And I've been off television for a long time, so I don't connect to, I don't know. I think it's just a farce. It really is.
Well,
I didn't want to give it our attention here. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and Corey said last night, it's a kind of form of rubbernecking. And I thought, okay, that's a good way of looking at it. It's a good way of looking at it.
And it's just, some people want that distraction, I guess, or they're just been trained, Oh, the interesting thing, this was about stabbings, people being stabbed in London.
Yeah, well, of course, in a city where we don't have guns, there's going to be a lot more knife crime.
Right. So I think that's what, so it was just exactly, I thought that. It's so fascinating. But, I just, I think that maybe shows like this will, especially, here you are, you're in the UK and I'm here in America and we're talking about the same issues. So I think that the more that we see the similarities in all of these systems, all of these civilizations, it's really the same things happening over and over. And when are we going to get smart and enough people wake up to tip the scale? I don't know.
No, we're getting there. I think bit by bit, people are coming awake in different ways, and I'm not sure what, we talked about peak oil, didn't we, and peak this and peak that. I don't know what the tipping point is for peak awareness or peak awakeness. It'll be an interesting moment when people en masse really doubt what the media is telling us or what the politicians are telling us, and don't act, can't be kind of herded the way that they think that they can herd us into doing what they would like us to do or believing what they would like us to believe. So there will come a time, I think, when a larger majority see things that way.
And I think for me anyway, I've already made the choice to disconnect and not believe the narrative. So that's why I don't continue to follow the conspiracies.
Yes.
Because that will continue to put my attention where I don't want it to be. Yeah. So I prefer, and I'm trying to look at the good that's happening and trying to get attached to that. When you're talking about whatever, fifth dimension, those higher vibe emotions, collaborating with people. Yeah. And then, I went through this year and I'm recuperating and I'm watching all this Gaia and I'm having so many downloads, even in my personal life, but here I am now, I'm all like fifth dimension and I'm open heart and all that. And then boom, back out to the 3D world. It was just like, and I'm thinking, because you think everyone's going to feel like, when you feel this way, everyone's going to feel this way. But then, you get smacked with, all those lower density things, everybody's fear, and so it's.
I think the way I feel about it is that I'm more on a level now, I guess I react less to things that are going on in the world, in my immediate vicinity, but also, like you say, kind of more remotely in the news, that I think I'm less triggered by things, I guess, because, once you're aware that there's a bigger picture than just this kind of little life that we're living in, this 3D reality in our bodies, I think it's not that you get indifferent to things or that you care less. In fact, you care more. You've got, you've got an enlarged sense of compassion and empathy with people's situations and prospects and so on. But I just don't get drawn in. I mean, I'm still guilty of rubbernecking. Okay, I will admit to you there that I'm still weaning myself off that. I've come but I go on Twitter and I sometimes get a bit locked into a story because I get I kind of get curious, I suppose. As the story writer in me
Right.
sees it as a big unfolding story, and in a way, it's exciting. Apart from
And
the
you need
fact,
to learn those things. There's something in that does want to learn.
yeah, you need to
I
learn. Yeah,
think because I was so intensely involved in the media for 6 years and even being a part of it, but I was studying it, going for my master's, I think I just hit a saturation point.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
So
So
I think that's why, yeah.
but I am aware I need to keep it into perspective. And in fact, my whole spiritual journey only came about because I was, used those kind of positive websites, like you said, and it was like Info
Right.
and Collective Evolution and those kinds of websites that I was going to as a sort of offsetting strategy when I'd had too much of the negativity. I was thinking, oh, I need a little boost now,
Right. Something cleansing.
something cleansing, some guided meditation by somebody on YouTube, and that's what got me. What's got me interested. I was thinking this isn't just a sort of a band-aid approach. I don't just want to kind of like use it to dust myself down when I've kind of got too embroiled in something.
Right.
This is a whole way of thinking. This is a whole way of life. This is a whole other understanding of what energy is and how the world works. And then that's what got me reading more and more, really.
Right.
I did have some friends, who I regarded, I suppose, even as recently as 5 years ago, as being a bit kind of bit wacky, a bit off the wall. And I knew that they were into this stuff, and reading this stuff. And I could, go to them and get some guidance about where I should be looking. But it's been a really interesting.
Well, you were practicing yoga prior to that retreat?
Yeah, do some yoga.
Prior to that retreat where you met Joe, you had already been practicing yoga?
Yeah, and I'd done a course. Yes, it was the second retreat that I'd done. So the previous January, I'd done a course in Ibiza, beautiful island, off the coast of Spain. And that course was it was a sort of billed as a meditation course, but actually we were learning to channel. And
that's awesome. I didn't know that you channel.
Oh yeah, and that really kind of moved me into another space. Yeah, when I realized I could do that and work with it and and honor it as well as a kind of a source of information and a way of getting guidance when I needed it and so on. So yeah, just integrated that into my daily routine, really, when I meditated, and I learned about the Akashic records and how to access those. And I'm still not sure whether I have done some channelings for others, when they've asked me to, and the 3 times that I've done it, it was they found it really, really helpful. But I'm not sure whether I'm ready or I feel confident to do it as a regular thing and offer it as a service or offer it regularly. Yeah.
I work with my higher self, and I also work with this crystal skull behind me.
Oh, yeah.
And so I feel the same way about that. I get a lot of information as well, and I would like to figure out as I go forward how I'll be able to share that more with others. Yeah.
It's just sort of patiently going step by step, really, isn't it? So the whole thing with this, I was just thinking about the bobcat thing again. It just came back into my mind. The first thing was I had this dream. I had a series of dreams that seemed to be precognition, if you like. So this one dream, something had happened in my kitchen. I have a stone floor in the kitchen. It's a really old house that we live in, and in the dream, I noticed that there was a tunnel that had opened up underneath my fridge. And this water was kind of leaking from somewhere and then flowing and down into this tunnel. And I was thinking, oh, maybe the water has worn away this tunnel. I just haven't noticed. How crazy is that? And then I knelt down and looked under the fridge and realized it really was quite a big hole, and it went back a long way, and I could see something in the tunnel, and I wasn't sure what it was, whether it was a bit of light but something sparkling in the tunnel. And then I realized it was a pair of eyes. And I was looking at a creature, and then the creature started to kind of come towards me out of the tunnel and stood in my kitchen, in the middle of my kitchen. And I've never seen a bobcat. Okay, I never even thought about a bobcat, but in my dream, I knew that's what it was. And then when later on when I went to check it, the image and the name bobcat obviously were right, but I'd never consciously thought, what does a bobcat look like? So it was really like a proper visitation in my dream. And anyway, then I think it was the daddy bobcat anyway, and his whole family then came out of the tunnel as well. So there were some little bobcat, do you call them kittens or cubs?
Yeah, kittens.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kittens, like bobcat kittens as well. And I was thinking, this is adorable, you know, what is going on? They're in my house, what do I do? and so I can't remember what happened, but anyway, there was something about, I put some milk down in the dream and not knowing what to feed them or give them, but I wanted to show that I was, you know, being friendly towards them. So I put some milk down in front of the fridge, and they kind of drank, and then they went back in the hole again. I was thinking, okay, so they're going to live with us now. Woke up, and then
that's awesome that you have bobcats living under your refrigerator.
I know. So then my husband, sometimes when I wake up, if I've had a bizarre dream, I'll tell him. So, you know, and I'm not even sure sometimes whether he's listening, but I need to tell him, you know, or write it down. So I told him, I said, I just had this extraordinary dream, you know. And he went off, I went off to do something. He was, it must have been a Saturday or something. He was at home with my daughter. And then he rang me up and he said, where in your dream did you put the milk down in the kitchen you know, for the bobcats? And I said, well, you know, right in front of the fridge by the door. And he said, because I've just dropped a whole pint of milk and smashed it right there, right on that spot.
That's so interesting.
And so I was like, okay, you know, so there were a couple of things that happened like that. And then I then, you know, went and read up about what is a bobcat as a totem animal, as a power animal, as a spirit animal, and why might I have had this, you know, the connection. So then I decided I was going to start journeying and ask to meet Bobcat on the journey to the lower world. And it went so fast, you know, like sometimes when you kind of go, you know, there's a little bit of a tentative thing and the animal doesn't show up, or it's a bit kind of remote, but this Bobcat was like right in my face, you know. The minute I got in the forest, down the tunnel, you know, I was like there with the Bobcat, and he took me on this kind of tour of his terrain, of his woodland, and showed me.
The Bobcat brought me to you and brought you to me.
Yeah, when you said it, I was thinking, well, there's a connection here, definitely. But as I crossed over the stream to the Bobcat's world, I became a Bobcat myself, and I could climb trees, and I had extra senses, you know, my ears and everything.
Wow.
So I've done about 3 journeys, and every time there's a really kind of strong and pertinent message that the Bobcat's giving me, but it's over so quickly. So when I go meditate, because you know, when I did the sort of shamanism course, you know, you do a journey and the drum's beating for like half an hour. But these sessions that I've had so far, so I light a incense stick, and I can tell how much time has passed when I come back from the journey by how much is burnt away. And
right.
Usually, like, it's a whole incense stick or whatever. But I come back and I've had this whole experience. It's really rich, and it takes me like 5 pages in my book to write it all down. It's like so dense and
right.
intense. And this tiny little bit has burnt off the incense stick. So
That's
I must
efficient.
2 or 3 minutes, you know.
Wow, that's efficient.
It's very efficient. Yeah, the Bobcat's like super efficient.
Yeah, holy cow.
I'm loving this whole relationship I've got now, and I don't know where it's going, but there's a lot that it's teaching me, and I'm just writing notes, you know.
Right. You can journey to stones as well.
Yeah, I haven't done anything so like so-called. I mean, we call it an inanimate object, but obviously in native cultures, nothing's inanimate,
right,
is it?
Exactly. Because I brought, like I mentioned, I go to the family constellations in Trumbull, and so once I brought a couple of hawk feathers that I had, and the shaman had said that represents her ancestors. And another time I brought a stone. I felt called to just pick a stone. I picked one stone, and then I put that stone down, and I picked another one. And she's put it in her bag, and she, about a month later, after she was acclimated to the stone, she did the journey, and I told her I found it on the Tunxus Trail where I hike, and she had looked up the Tunxus means bend in the river.
Yeah.
And when she went to the journey, she went to the bend in the river, and she was met by a Native American elder, and there were her 2 assistants. And so I'll send you the PDF if you're interested to hear about it. And she had said that she had asked me to bring her that stone because she is, and it was sharp like a knife, she said. And she gave her the name, the family bone setter, and she thanked her for helping to mend tribes. And she also showed her what happened to their tribes when they were colonized. And so it's just amazing. So I was just like, that's so, and she offered her services and her help to anybody, you know, as an ancestor of this land, that she would assist her in her healing work, and any of us that want to call on them, that, you know, she was offering her help.
I think when you tap into the ancient wisdom of your ancestors, the messages that you get from them is so powerful and supportive. It's incredible. And then you realize time isn't linear at all.
Right,
you know, I did a clearing session with a guy in London about a year ago, and he said, you know, we're going to meet our ancestors and we're going to, you know, receive advice from them. And it was really empowering. And I discovered that a lot of my ancestors had been artisans, you know, and they'd worked with their hands, and they were just so encouraging and you know, saying, you know, like, we didn't have the opportunities that you have, but we can see that we would have done with these opportunities what you're doing. So they were kind of just, you know, they were just kind of backing me, really, just saying, we've got your back. And
your ancestors, so it would just be this country? Were you from England forever, or where did you come from?
I don't know, because I've heard that Chaplin might be a Russian name from Belarus.
Interesting.
In fact, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, his surname is Chaplin. So that got me thinking, because when I went to St. Petersburg, I know it's not Belarus, and my husband's been to Belarus now on work, but when we were in St. Petersburg, I was walking down the street and looking at the people and thinking, oh, these are my people. I had this like intuition that
That's
they...
interesting.
Yeah, I couldn't really put my finger on it. It wasn't really so much about how they looked. It was just like a kind of feeling of a connection.
Does the architecture call to you at all, or?
Not really, no. I mean, it's a nice city.
Sure, you were an architect, right? You were a designer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a really special city, St. Petersburg. But it was more just looking into
like the Ancestry.com. Maybe do the blood.
I think we should. Yeah,
maybe we should do a thing like that. Maybe we'll have a reveal and
how you do that. Yeah, well, we have this series on TV in the UK. It may have been exported as a franchise now to the US, called Who Do You Think You Are? And they take a famous person, you know, a celebrity,
right.
And it's quite a.
I think I've seen that show.
Yeah, because they then take them and, you know, show them things about their ancestors that they didn't know, and it's quite a ride. They're quite good.
There's a different version of it, probably called something else here, because it'll be more like American history, or they'll go to Europe or other places, and they're always like, wow, they had no idea.
Yeah, exactly. So we've done a bit. I mean, some of my more recent relatives are from Canada, but obviously originally they would have migrated there at some point in the past. So a lot of my relatives on my dad's side are still in Canada, and then also we've got some Scandinavian ancestry, the Andersons from my grandmother's side, and I don't really know.
You can see you appear like some Scandinavian. That's the appearance to me. Some of that.
Well, this isn't really natural
Scandinavian. That helps.
But yeah, I like to think that I would identify with them, and a bit Nordic as well. I mean, I kind of think maybe we are all a bit alien. We've got bits of alien in us, and different kinds of, you know. It's
amazing when you think of how many lineages you're connected to.
Amazing, yeah.
You know? And I met one grandfather. I didn't meet any other grandparents. I only met him when I was 7, when we were in Ireland for a brief time.
Yeah.
And I was 7 years old. So, but then you think back, you know, then you have what? So it would be, I'm so bad with math, but so you would have 2 grandparents, so 4 great grandparents, 8 great, I don't know.
Yeah, that's right, you double it, yeah.
You know, so that's, when you think of all of those lineages, when you just go further back, I mean, at some point we're all connected. That's, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's
and we're all connected anyway, because if this is, you know, this is a hologram and we're all just parts of the hologram, then you know, really you're part of me and I'm part of you, and we're all just having this experience in this very particular configuration of space and time and place and all of that.
Yeah, pretty cool. And we got some good tools here. I love talking to people across the pond. Yeah, those kind of sayings are just funny. I used to, you know, It's a very big pond. Let's admit it.
I wouldn't want to swim it.
Right. I think my mother came across in in an ocean liner.
Yeah, my dad did it once when he was a kid at 12, and it took them days. Yeah, I mean, it was.
Yeah, I think it was a rough time too. Some of those back, especially I've done cruises too, and I don't know. I feel a little claustrophobic on cruises.
Yeah, I feel I really don't like air travel much anymore. I think they've just taken all the joy out of it as an experience, and they've made it quite a kind of fear-based sort of the codification of behavior at an airport, and I don't just makes you. I'm not phobic about the kind of the science of flying. I think that used to preoccupy me a lot, that I didn't understand how something that big and heavy could stay in the air. It's like that was part of the fear of it. So it's just unpleasant now, I would say, flying. And so I'm trying to kind of think of ways of getting around other than that. So we've got an anniversary coming up in September, my husband and I. We're going to be married 30 years.
Congratulations.
We're going to go to, there's a train you can take now from London all the way down to bottom of France.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it just takes like 4 or 5 hours, and you don't have to get off and change in Paris. So we're going to stay down.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the idea of taking a train. My parents took a train across the country, and they went to see the Grand Canyon, which I would love to do one day. But that's great that you're getting out there. And so when's your anniversary? This month?
Do you know when my anniversary is? Why this whole 9/11 thing is so connected for me? I got married on the 11th of September.
Right.
In 1988. And then 11 years later, on the 11th of September 1999, my first child was born. It was not planned. It was not meant to be.
Interesting, right?
Co-opted it. And then my Dutch friend said to me, when we came up for our 12 and a half year anniversary, she said, why don't you switch your anniversary to the 6 months later? So have it in March. She said, because in Holland, we call that your copper anniversary, your 12 and a half year anniversary. Have it then instead, and then it doesn't conflict with your son's birthday. I said, oh, that's a good idea. So we'll do that. So we had one anniversary, our 12 and a half year anniversary on the 11th of March. And then the following year, my second child was born on the 11th of March. So he commandeered that one. And then, of course, the previous year, we'd been planning to tell our family that we were expecting a second one. And we'd got everyone, to come to my son's second birthday party, my first child's second birthday party. And we thought, well, we'll tell them that day. That seems a nice day to tell them that, we're expecting another baby. Right. And then the whole day was just completely, sort of kiboshed by the fact that my sister rang and said, have you seen what's going on the television? What's happening? And so all our plans were scuppered that whole day. Eventually we did tell them that we were expecting a baby, but it was slightly eclipsed by the events.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's fascinating.
So I think I've just felt there's so much, and the reason we chose the 11th of September as well was that we discovered pretty soon after we met that my parents and my husband's parents had married on that day, but different years. So my parents had married in 65, and that his had married in 54.
That is so interesting.
It's just mad, isn't it?
So do you get a little nervous when March or September come around, the 11th? But yeah, and then that number 11 too, right? Isn't that's a symbolic number, isn't it? Like with numerology and angels and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the 11-11 thing. I mean, I'm sure you've been having
and
that.
9/11, 9, 10, plus 1 is 11.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know that much about numerology, but I have to tell you, yesterday, my son is 22 years old today.
Oh, yes.
And I noticed yesterday, every time I looked at the clock, I was getting double digits. And recently I've been waking up. I woke up at 3:33. I was waking up at 5:55 the other morning. I looked at the clock at 11:22, 4:11, and 5:22 yesterday. Yeah.
That happens to me a lot. And I kind of take it now that it's a little checking in with the universe, saying to you, you're on your path.
Right.
And when I look now and find that the clock is not a significant number, that I think I haven't quite calibrated that day. I'm not quite in the pocket. I'm not quite there.
Right. Yeah, because I haven't. I'm not getting any of those today.
Yeah.
But,
So yeah, some days it
but
does.
I'm gonna consider myself in the pocket anyway, because
Yeah, I just think it's a little message to you to kind of just stay on your path and kind of not get distracted, or not you know how sometimes you're not quite sure what order to do things in, and then something about the order you did eventually choose, if you've got a bunch of things to do in a given day,
right.
it knocks out the whole, the sequence that you eventually settle on somehow has implications that you weren't expecting, and
Mm-hmm.
that's sometimes, and I think I haven't paid attention to the messaging enough, and then it didn't quite flow the way it should have done.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm going to try and pay attention more, because I was having a rough couple of weeks. I started out pretty well at the beginning of last month, and then hit some flow issues. I got triggered somehow with one of these, with the situation, but it's all meant to teach, so I stay open to it. Also, the other thing I wanted to bring up earlier, I think part of when we were talking about staying neutral, I don't know if they use that word, but you were talking about similar to that, where I usually try to, and I think that's a Buddhist philosophy, right? To remain neutral, non-attachment.
Non-attachment.
So I've been working with that for 20 years or so. And I'd worked through a 12-step program many years ago, which I think shares some of these same philosophies. But I think for me, that helps, because I used to, either just be super, super excited and high and thrilled and passionate, or, and then you'd have the opposite of that, or things could devastate me. And, I'm just taking everything so emotionally. So now I've learned to, compassionately detach or disengage from that field, and then that gives me some space to process, I always feel like I have to just talk with my hands when I talk about energy. I'm always like using my hands, because that's what it feels like to me, There's all these things we have here, there, and I'm just saging everything that seems to help a lot.
Oh, I'm so glad you reminded me, because I'm going to sage stuff today, because I was just feeling I needed to kind of clear some stuff out. I woke in the middle of the night last night.
What time?
It wasn't 2:22, but it was kind of somewhere around there.
Right.
And
I had messages.
And I was like, what's because something, it was a slightly unsettled feeling, and slightly like I needed to clean through something. So I'm gonna do some smudging later on. Yeah.
I have been watching this delightful YouTuber, Sage Goddess. She's out of Los Angeles, so she owns a metaphysical shop and sells gemstones. But so she has full moon ritual ceremonies for free, and new moon and full moon rituals, and she does live specimen sales and other things. But I just find her delightful. She has a series on astrology too.
Yeah. Okay.
And she's the Sage Goddess. Of course, she loves sage. And she recommends saging your hands, sage your phone.
Yeah.
And she just loves sage, and she's delightful. So,
Oh, I really check that out. Yeah.
Maybe
listen, I'm gonna have to shoot off, because I'm just looking at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited that we got a chance to talk.
I'm sorry we couldn't do longer, but
no, we'll talk again though.
Let's do it again. And you're doing great. It's great.
Thank you so much.
Really open, and I think it's going to be quite thought-provoking for people when it's not so. It's a note to me to not be so pre-planned about these things. Yeah.
Right.
Be more open and go with it.
But in a way, you do need to have that plan. And so I think it helped that you at least gave me that structure this week. And so even yesterday, I was pretty productive, and maybe the numbers were helping me, because I did manage to schedule something. I'm going to be going next Monday to a sound healer, his location, but I'll probably pre-record something with video there.
Nice.
But I was productive, and I got a couple things booked, because I think, I was thrown by maybe the challenge of booking people, I thought it would probably be like the universe would be just supporting me and everything would just come so easily. And it's like, no, 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 you still have to work.
Yeah, there's still some effort going on,
Right.
unfortunately.
So, well, you have a wonderful day.
You too. You two
Yeah.
go have some breakfast now.
Thanks so much. I may take a walk today. I'll bring my whistle and another human.
Say hi to the bear.
I will.
Okay. All right. Love and blessings.
Find me on Instagram. I'm called Here Now, Where Now.
Here Now, Where Now on Instagram. Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks, Kathleen. Okay, bye.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lainey Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination.
You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level.
Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent media by donating to our 2018 Network Support Fund. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.
No time for any sleep.